around Barry. I've learned something. I leave him feeling better.
But what did you think when they said, "Oh, this guy Barry Jenkins was talking to you about this movie"?
Honestly, I had said maybe about 2 months before, I'd finished 7 seconds, and I was like, I'm not playing nobody's mama. I'm cool. I am cool on it. Like, don't send me anything for about 5 years with mama attached.
And then Mama gets to Puerto Rico on an evening play.
But I get this email from my reps, and they say, Barry Jenkins has adapted a James Baldwin piece called If Beale Street Could Talk. They are interested in meeting with you for the role of Sharon Rivers. And I'm like, maybe Sharon's not a mama. Because I hadn't read If Beale Street Could Talk. And so, yes, Sharon was a mama. And I just think Barry's genius. I saw Moonlight. I did not know I had seen Medicine for Melancholy because I just caught it like on the IFC channel or something like that. One day I had off when I was shooting American Crime, and I'm flicking through channels and I see black people in black and white, and I'm like, oh, what's this? And watched it and loved the film, but for whatever reason, I never looked back to see what the film was. And I told my agents, this guy is a genius, but he could be on one hit wonder. And they were like, well, you should see Medicine for Melancholy. And I'm like, I should. And I couldn't find it. And they found it and they sent it to me, and I was like, oh my God, this is the same guy that did this? He is genius. It's not a one-hit wonder. He's brilliant. And then I got to meet him and just felt like, Barry, if it's not this film, I have to work with you at some point, at some time, because you understand collaboration, and I feel like I'm going to learn. That's like the most important thing in life, to leave a situation better. And when you meet people and you have that feeling like that's gonna happen, you're supposed to latch on. And like I said, if it wasn't Beale, it was gonna be something.
You did say that, I remember.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I think I said it a couple times. He was in Montreal and I was in Mexico when we met. Technology.
Yes.
The wig scene. Tell us all about it. Everything. Motivation, everything. She puts it on, and then I noticed this. I watched the film 3 times. You shake your head. After, like, this isn't going to do. And then you go with it. I noted, but tell us about everything. Tell us about preparing for that. I know in the book it was a scarf.
Yes.
So
Shawl.
A shawl, excuse me.
This backs up what I felt like I discovered the first time I met Barry, working with someone that is a collaborator. Once I did get the role, we started having a lot of conversations, and he did with everyone involved, with Nick, with everyone involved with this show. With this film, that's the beautiful thing about Barry. He, expresses his vision, and he wants to hear yours, and let's see what we come up with, and if he's not feeling it, he explains why, and he wants to hear why you're feeling a certain way, and it's just so exciting. And I said to him, Barry, I was wondering if this scene, what do you feel about it being a wig? Because when I think about my grandmother, and she had her wigs, and her wigs were like her putting on her armor. She had wigs for different occasions. And he calls everybody Miss King, Miss Lane, Miss Tiana, Tay. She would give you this. She doesn't like when you call her that, you know that. But because you're so amazing, she was like, he is the only person I will let call me that. But he said, you know what, Miss King? That's not bad. That's not bad. And Nick knows, that's Barry. That's not bad. That's not bad. And he said, let me think about that. And then
Put it in the
he
script.
put it in the script.
Put it in the script.
So that was kind of like the beginning of me just knowing that I could trust this man. And then when we get to it, and we did not talk about it, that scene, and again, since that time, and then when we get to the DR to shoot that scene, I find out it's going to be me looking into the camera when I land on set. And when you have when you have someone who creates a space that's safe like Barry, you just trust that everything that you prepared for as an actor, as playing Sharon, that he knows the perfect environment to let that fly. And that's just what we did. Landed on set, and he says, all right, Miss King, it's just you in the mirror. And I said, okay, Barry. Okay, that's what we're doing. And he just allowed me to just go through all of the things that I thought that Sharon would be going through in that moment. Everything from you really want to just break and just give up, but you can't, so you get it together. And I think so many of us in life have experienced that moment, and that moment represented that for everyone, to me.
She's such a wonderful woman. She's the angel. She balances the scales. She's the voice of reason. Take us to the scene where she meets Victoria. Can you tell us about that? Preparing for that, playing that, it's crushing. It's crushing. You feel for you. You got one shot.
Yeah.
One shot. We know you can do it.
Because you're Sharon Rivers.
Exactly.
And the beautiful thing is, Barry was so great at honoring James Baldwin's story, his words, his intention. And that's in the book. As you're reading the book, you're feeling like Sharon's gonna go and get it done. And your heart is broken when you're reading the book. And so first the table was set by Mr. Baldwin. And then Barry just really laid the table out with all of the extras that, may have been, now I don't want to say forgotten, but weren't placed out, the first time. And he did that by casting Emily Rios, and casting the abuelitas, and picking the right little women that had fire but grace. All of that makes that moment. It's not that moment without everything involved. Finding that this apartment that Victoria's character lived in. There were a few scenes that we shot that were in the original script that aren't in the film that led up to that scene where you see them together. And those other scenes weren't needed to tell the story, but they were needed for all of us to get to where we needed to be to tell the story. And it was just magical. Emily Rios is such a prepared actor. She's so focused. So we were both in this place, I think, of protecting what's dear to us, the art, a woman being violated, someone fighting for their child. All of those things were present for us and present for Barry. And so that's what you got.
Barry, is that standard for you to shoot extra or to put in extra scenes so that the actor can emotionally, so they can get to a certain
I
place?
mean, no, I mean, bro, I wish I had that time back, you know? I hadn't filmed those scenes, but I also agree with Regina. I think, you know, even though you guys in the audience don't need to see the build-up to those moments, I do think for the actors, especially the way we make these films, we don't do a lot of rehearsal before we start production. I think it is important to give the actors as much runway as possible. You know, and I think that when you're editing a film, you know, you want to get in as late as possible and get out as early as possible. And so I do think that scene work is great for the characters, for the actors, but not necessary for you guys sitting here in the cinema. So no, it's not something I do intentionally. Not at all, bruh. I'd be much more efficient if I didn't do that stuff. But it's something that I think is always a blessing. You know, Mahershala said this about Moonlight. There are scenes between him and Janelle Monáe that are not in the film, but he says they're in the performance. So just like when Nick and I work, you know, there's tons of score that nobody will ever hear.
There's a lot of music.
But it's the runway that leads us to what's in the film. So yeah, I think process begets process.
Tell us about, and speaking of process, you began with flugelhorns in jazz. Tell us about that.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Absolutely. No, for sure.
Expound on that.
You know, and actually, I would say, you know, along the way of figuring out what the sound of the film was, Barry and I don't really know what it's going to be when we start. And what's amazing, I would second everything that Regina just said, because I agree, the trust, the collaboration, the openness to trying things, the incredible belief and support that Barry provides all of us is really special and enables us to do what we're trying to do. But I would say the first thing that Barry said to me was he was hearing brass and horns, and he said that to me actually before he shot the film. This was, I think, in September when we saw each other and we're talking about that. And I'd read the book, read the script, and I'm always fascinated by that kind of process where, especially when the film hasn't even been shot yet, and it was similar when we worked on Moonlight, I think you write different things when you are just kind of imagining what the movie might feel like from when you are responding to a film. And it's always amazing to see the things that work and the things that don't work. With Beale Street, I started writing for flugelhorns and trumpets and French horns and cornet and experimenting with that. And I wrote a piece of music whose harmonies and melody you do hear actually throughout the film, but that piece itself is not in the movie. Because what happened was when we put it up against the picture, it just felt like it was missing something. And one of the things I love about working with Barry is that we both get a chance to be in the room together, and we spend days together just sort of experiencing the film and talking. And I think the crucial thing is we're both really sort of honest with ourselves about, is something working? And Barry knows when we get there, like when he feels something, because I think Barry knows what he wants to feel. And for me, that's an incredible guide, because I know when we get there, we'll be there, and we'll both feel that. And so I get this incredible guidance from Barry, and the thing that we discovered was that the score was missing strings, and in particular, it was missing cellos. And we came to that through this process of experimenting, where I started taking some of the things I wrote for the brass and playing them on cellos, and immediately it felt like it was sort of symbolically bringing about that feeling of love that's in the film, because the film has all these different kinds of love. It has unconditional, almost divine love. It has romantic love. It has erotic love. There's the love that parents have for their children. And the way that we evolved the cellos through the score is really about those different types of love. And we even named the tracks in the score after the ancient Greek words for love. So there's a piece called agape, a piece called eros, storge, philia.
Wow.
Tell us about the Miles Davis and the long tail. In that scene.
Absolutely. There's the incredible sequence when Daniel is telling Fonny about his experience in prison. And when I first saw that scene, there was Miles Davis Blue and Green playing on the record player, but there was no score. And up until about April, I guess, of last year, we had been focused on that feeling of love and joy. But we hadn't yet actually scored those moments of injustice. And again, it's one of those amazing things about working with Barry. I'm talking about you in the third person here, but one of the things about working with you is that, you know, I can say, I have this crazy idea, and you immediately are just like, show me. There's nothing that Barry doesn't want to hear, and it doesn't mean it's going to work, but that's the exciting thing, because when it does work, it's really exhilarating. And I had this idea of, what if I took the cellos that you hear in the track Eros when Tish and Fanny are first making love, and what if I bent them and distorted them and made them sound almost hellish? And Barry would say to me, you know, how do we break this sound? So I was actually kind of like harming this sound of love and joy, and it sounded horrific to us. And so as Daniel was talking to Fanny, I started taking the Miles Davis and running it through this very long tail reverb, so it's kind of like your sense of perception is almost changing, and you feel like you're going into sort of a different state of mind, and just as that's happening, you hear this sort of rumbling, grinding kind of a sound. That is this beautiful moment of love from earlier that has now been transformed into this sort of feeling of hellishness and injustice.
And Miles and James were friends. They were very good friends over in when James lived in France. I'm going to throw it out to the audience for some questions. Yes.
Hi, Brian. What, as a storyteller, characters tell you from the page, like what they're saying, what they're feeling. But as a director, did they tell you how they wanted it to be seen?
No, yes and no. I think both Moonlight and Beale Street are kind of point of view films, and so it's not that Sharon tells me how she wants to be seen. I think because the story is told through Tish's point of view in a certain way, Tish is telling me how Mama needs to be seen. That's the way I sort of framed it in a certain way. You know, the page is the page, and then what we film is what we film. And so even to that point, I think the Tish that I wrote on the page is not what's dictating how the film looks and feels. I think Kiki Lane is Tish, is dictating how the film looks and feels. You know, it's a collaborative art form, and what I see in my head is really cool. It's dope. It's dope. You know, I got an award for adapted screenplay, and I don't mean shit. You know, if she can't embody the character, you know, if he can't bring his strings to the score. And so I think in that sort of way, it's not that the characters are speaking to me or dictating how they individually want to be seen, is that this movie is framed through the dreams, the memories, the nightmares of a 19-year-old girl. And so how does she see the world? It's like the best moment of her life, the first time she's made love, the first time she realizes that someone she loves thinks she's beautiful. That's going to be very saturated and vibrant. And then the horror of seeing her husband, her fiance, witness his friend relive his trauma, that's going to be very dark and filled with shadows. So I think when you align it to that prism, it frees you from restrictions of genre or story form, and then it just becomes about what is this young woman's point of view.
Yes.
Hello, Regina T. Dorsey. Barry.
Hey, Reggie.
Barry, were you aware of how poignant your film would be in terms of what's going on today in society?
I know what you're asking. No, I wasn't, bro. No, I wrote this in 2013, and I think all the first draft I wrote in 2013. At that point, I could not have been aware that the movie would arrive at the moment that it did. And yet, it's James Baldwin, you know. And so I think even if I made this in 1986, you know, I think it still would have been as poignant, as you say, because Mr. Baldwin was quite eloquent and quite direct and clear about the things he was writing towards. And so I think when you step up to adapt someone like James Baldwin or Toni Morrison, you know, any of these great American authors, you know, I think, yeah, because the truth they spoke to is still with us, these problems are still pervasive. This book was published in 1974, and yet so much of it is still very relevant today. I should have known, but I didn't, bro. I thought I just adapted my favorite author, and then it's like, oh shit, here we are, you know? Hey, exactly.
Yes, in the front of the second section, in the white.
Yeah, so now hearing that there were deleted scenes or scenes that you had before that.
So many deleted scenes. Oh my goodness. They gonna be on a Blu-ray.
Right.
Dig it up. Dig it up. Dig it up.
Well, specifically when Mom goes to Puerto Rico, was there ever, like, I was so immersed in the story that I'm like, okay, I'm there, I'm you, I've flown there, that the logical part of me was like, the alibi, tell her about the alibi, and then I, reasoned, and I'm like, well, she probably told the gentleman before, or, before this alley scene, she wouldn't have left without it,
Yeah, so when Regina originally gets to the front door, Victoria is sweeping. And she right away pulls out the photo and shows her, and she's like, have you seen this man, blah, blah, blah. And, Victoria's dealing with trauma. And she's like, I don't want to go there just yet. And yet, these are both decent people. I think Sharon is not attacking Victoria. She's like, I just want to talk. She lets her in, they keep talking, and Regina gets right to it. And there's even a moment in the kitchen where she's like, but that can't be. And then Victoria, I mean, she like basically that they're going back and forth, talking around this thing. That's fine to me, but the movie's not a procedural. The movie's about trauma in a certain way.
It seems like that scene in the alley, they were both so involved as women that there was just like, I know I'm not going to press. I'm not coming here with my gun to your head. I'm trying to understand you and have you understand me.
I think everything you're saying is the reason why all these other scenes, which are repeating beats that are meant to unlock the place you're talking about, they weren't necessary.
But you went through them.
They were so unnecessary, those aren't even on the DVD. It's like the hell
But you guys know about them now.
I mean, if you read the book, because it's all there in the book.
Up front here in yellow.
Wait, let me pause real quick.
Sorry.
I just want to talk to that real quick.
Sorry.
So Regina is so damn good. So as we're filming, because we filmed in New York for like 5 weeks, then we took a week off for Thanksgiving, we went to the DR. And while we were filming in New York, like week 3, we did the scene with Kiki and Regina. That's also not in the film. And the scene was really intense. But it was information that you guys don't need. We know that this family loves Fonny. We know that Kiki, that Tish and Fonny are in love. We just know all this shit. You get it when you see them walking down that park. But Regina said to me, very quietly, very simply, hey, when we're in the DR, can you just have that on you? Because I might want to watch it right before I do this scene with Emily. And so I had it with me, because I was like, I remember I had it with me, I had it loaded up on my laptop, and you never asked for it. You never asked for it. And here's what I mean about, the process, beginning the process. She didn't need it. She didn't need any runway. Once she got to the alley, it was so clear. There was a feeling that she had, that Emily had, they understood it as women. There was a trauma they were both trying to respectfully engage without triggering, just to get to the point where. And so I just think that so many of these wonderful things that you never asked for it. Not even, and I had it. And it was tough as hell to get it. It was so tough.
Thank you.
Never asked for it.
Thank you. I don't remember asking for it the first time because once I got there with Emily, she was so there.
No, you asked for it in New York. This was like
Yeah.
3 weeks before. And then we got there and I had it.
That was probably just me preparing because I didn't know who Victoria was
and
going
I
to
was
be.
all over my assistant. I was like, you gotta have this thing. Regina said it, and I know during that 8th take she gonna turn and ask for it, and you never asked for it, not even once. I had to smuggle this shit to the DR basically, and you never asked for it. But I got you. I had you.
You have my back. That's the reason why
All
you are Barry Jenkins.
All right. I'm sorry, my dear. Let's get to your question.
I just wanted to know for both of you, which was the most challenging scene that you both had to work on?
What was the question?
What was the
What was
most challenging
scene?
I just feel for me, the whole sequence of the DR work was really challenging because it was hot as Hades. And it was all of Sharon's work. And when we got to the end of it, my body kind of broke down. It was like, give it all I got. So it was hot and we were jamming, and I gotta just say this beautiful thing I'm one of those people that believes in you find the beauty in the bruises, and we were supposed to shoot this the Puerto Rico stuff actually in Puerto Rico. Barry had already scouted and had found the locations, and then Hurricane Irma, I think it was, that chick hit and just devastated Puerto Rico, as we all know. But what the producer in the studio did is they brought the people that were employed to work in Puerto Rico to the Dominican Republic. So we had all of that with us, and I mean, you could feel it. You could feel it. So that was the hardest, but also the most beautiful. But for me, I mean, it's hard to narrow it down because this film, which I mean, the Rivers family, we were a family. I mean, we were like Sister Sledge. We are family. It was. We fell into our places. Barry knew that Coleman, Kiki, Tiana, and I were supposed to be a family. Like, let me tell you, when Tiana was cast, I was like, I don't look like I could be her mama. And he was like, you are a young mom, Regina. You are a young mom. And I was like, I don't look like I could be her mom. So I looked her up on IMDb and saw her age. I was like, okay, I could be her mom. But oh my God, I wouldn't have wanted anyone else to have played Ernestine. If you get the chance to read the book, what Tiana did in that scene when the two families are together, she took something that James Baldwin had written out. It was like 3 or 4 pages of what Ernestine was saying. And Tiana embodied that in those lines that Barry wrote, and just, whoo. Man, a couple of times I forgot to say Ernestine because I'm just stunned by her performance. And I'm, oh, Ernestine!
So which place?
Kiki Lane.
First film ever. Yeah.
Before we go, could you tell the story about Kiki Lee? She came in and she was just there's a whole.
Not even that. Kiki, you know, you got to manifest your own destiny. Kiki was helping. She had just moved to LA. She was helping a friend of hers audition for the role of Fonnie. And while reading the sides, you know, behind camera, looked down and said, "Wait, why am I auditioning for this part?" Didn't have a rep, no agent, no manager. Spent like 3 weeks chasing one down, and when she got one, said, "I need you to do one thing. I need you to get me a tape to Barry Jenkins." And she did, and the tape came in, and I was like, "Oh, hey." And so we flew her out like a week later to chemistry with Stefan James, and the rest is history. So yeah, she saw it, she manifested.
If Beale Street could talk.
Thank you.